Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what's going on, everybody? How you doing? Happy Thanksgiving Eve. Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you to everybody out there, as always, for watching and for listening, for following, subscribing. I appreciate you guys very much. Today's episode is sponsored by Sunny Reds, just minutes away from Highmark Stadium, down the road. Abbott Road, one of the best places to go for food, man. I love that place. The wings are the bomb. The brick oven pizza is elite. The vibes are great. They support the show. Make sure if you support this show, you get a chance, go out and check out Sunny Reds. You will not be sorry. Again, this is the last show before Thanksgiving, our Wednesday show, which means, as usual right now, I'm joined by my buddy over at SB Nation, Matt Warren. Man, what's going on, dude? How you doing?
Everything's good. We're taping this on Tuesday, so my kids are at their last day of school before break. And who knows what's going to happen over the next 5 days while they're home? We'll go see some movies, do some eating and all that stuff. So hopefully you've got a nice little Thanksgiving lineup planned as well.
Yeah, I do, man. So we go to my sister-in-law has a big house, and my in-law parents they're old, man. I mean, they're early 80s, so they have a guest house there, an in-law house, whatever you call it. So at this point, my father, love him dearly, can't really get around physically much anymore. So pretty much every holiday now, we go there. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, all that stuff. Because like I said, he really can't get out and about anymore. So that's where we continue to enjoy our holidays, hopefully for a long time to come. What do you got planned for tomorrow? Well, people listening to this on Wednesday, tomorrow will be in Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's one of the holidays I don't have to host, which is always one of the reasons it's my favorite holiday. I like to eat. We don't have to worry about presents or all that other stuff. So, what my wife and I have moved a few different times, but every time we moved closer to home. So I'm 5 minutes from my mom, 5 minutes from my in-laws, and we're going over to my wife's aunt's house, which is even closer. It's 1 mile from our house. So everyone's kind of centrally located here over in Genesee County, and so it won't be too tricky to get around.
I always say Christmas is the season and Thanksgiving is just a day. And I love Thanksgiving. I'm a Thanksgiving guy, but it's not a season. It doesn't stop me, and this, from getting all my Christmas shit up and getting Christmas season going early. But I say it's just a day. But when it gets to be that week of Thanksgiving, everything, and we talked real brief here before we went on the air, everything just gets condensed and hectic, even if it's just one day. Like you said, you're trying to squeeze a whole week's worth of work into basically 2.5 days. And not to mention family stuff going on. And in some cases, cooking, depending on, if you're going somewhere, people are coming over. It really is a crazy week, even though Thanksgiving is just a day.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that drop off has been a little light the last 2 days for my kids, so I know a lot of folks are off this whole week too. So if you're trying to get stuff done, sometimes the right person isn't, in the office because they're traveling or whatever. And I know other schools, I know the local parochial school here in Batavia is off the whole week too. So not to mention all the sicknesses creeping in and folks taking off because of that. So it's just, tis the season, right? It's 5 weeks where stuff takes a little bit longer. It's just a little bit more difficult to get stuff done.
Definitely, for sure. All right, so today we're going to get into the Buffalo Bills. Obviously now are off the bye week. A big game on Sunday. They're all big games at this point of the season. They always are. But anyway, a game on Sunday night, prime time at home against the struggling San Francisco 49ers. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But I want to focus on what I think are some of the biggest keys for the Buffalo Bills right now to maintain the success that they've had leading up to the bye week, a 9-2 record. For that, though, real quick. So on Twitter, and I still do mess around with Twitter. I just can't help myself at this point. But anyway, so Shaq Barrett reportedly is coming out of retirement. The Miami Dolphins hold his contractual rights right now anyway. Somebody put up a tweet, and I thought it was interesting, and they said, if you could have a retired player or somebody come out of retirement right now and join your team, who would it be? And God, I couldn't be any more obvious that I was joking. I said Dante Whitner. Now, I know a lot of people will just think I'm thinking safety because, with the DeMar Hamlin thing going on all this year. I said Dante Whitner. Uh, at least you vaguely remember. I have a history with Dante Whitner. I can't believe more people on Twitter didn't realize this. Going back to 2010, 2011, I thought he stunk. He was overrated. And he really was too, by the way. And he was also a shitty person. Talked a lot of shit and never did anything on the field. But anyway, I kind of called him out. I had a blog, Buffalo Sports Daily at the time, and I called him out in a column. He clearly got wind of that. And next thing you know, the dude was challenging me to a fight, a boxing match for charity. I mean, this was like a real ass thing. In fact, going back to those days, and look, Dante Whitner would have killed me in a boxing ring. I'm not stupid, but I was having fun with it. And I got Baby Joe Macy was going to train me, and we were going to make some fake training videos to have a little bit of fun with that. Anyway, his agent pulled the plug. He said, you can't be doing that. But anyway, my point was, is everybody who knows me knows I cannot stand Dante Whitner. So I was clearly joking, but there's a handful of people on Twitter accusing me right now as we're recording this. Clickbait, stop. Dante Whitner, are you kidding me? Yes, I am kidding you. I would not have Dante Whitner be the guy to come out of retirement to join the 2024 Buffalo Bills. You got to be kidding me. That guy sucked. And he was an ass. He really, truly was too. I just, man, oh man. Anyway, it did get me thinking though, before we kind of dive into the meat and potatoes of today's team. And we didn't talk about this before because this literally just happened over the last 10 minutes or so. If you could, let's try to frame this in a kind of realistic manner. Semi-realistic, as realistic as you could possibly get under these circumstances. If you could get a Buffalo Bill back out of retirement to join this team, but it's got to be somebody, say, within the last maybe 7 to 10 years. And of course, it would be Bruce Smith. Everybody would say Bruce Smith, yes. or Andre Reed, something like that. No. We can't go there. It's got to be a former, and it's got to be a former Buffalo Bill too. It can't be Aaron Donald because that's the first person that I thought of as well. But just for shits and giggles, for fun, if you could have a Buffalo Bill unretire, like I said, during that time frame and join this team right now, it could be most helpful. Who would it be?
I mean, I think the easiest answer is Micah Hyde. I mean, we're still talking about him. I know he hasn't officially even filed his paperwork. So you're talking about a player on the Dolphins who did file his paperwork and now is filing to get reinstated. So Hyde hasn't even done that yet. So I think he's the right answer. I'm struggling to think of a player over the last few years from a position. Maybe it's like a Cole Beasley or John Brown or something like that. But the way that those guys played at the end, I wouldn't want that version of them. I would want the real good version of them. The Bills just they've been able to move on from a lot of those aging players before they kind of hit the wall. So even players that had that downslide right at the end of their career and then left Buffalo, it's harder to think of somebody other than say those couple guys.
Yeah. I had a comment. Somebody said, hey, it's Dante Hittner to you. Remember when he changed his name on Twitter? The Dante Hittner. Yeah, Micah Hyde probably, if we're going 2021 Micah Hyde, I think that's an easy choice. But there is one other guy that I thought of, and I don't even know if he would, as great as he was for this football team. I mean, there's at least talk that he's Wall of Fame worthy, but Kyle Williams. Just imagine having, say Taquan and Ed Oliver. I still think Ed Oliver probably starts because I think he just physically was more talented than Kyle Williams was at the time. But man, oh man, how nice would it be? What a luxury instead of going to Austin Johnson or Dwayne Carter to be able to have Kyle Williams come in and be that guy to plug in at defensive tackle, because I do think that's one of, and we're going to talk about this position in a minute here. One of the things that I'd be concerned about, obviously there's a lot of concern about safety, even though the Bills have not given us a lot of reason to be concerned about safety this season. Mm-hmm. Defensive tackle, being able to stop the running game, we've seen that rear its ugly head a couple times this season. So that's all I could
Oh
think
yeah.
of, man. A run stuffing defensive lineman who'd be really good. And I just kind of feel like Kyle Williams is probably the best. Would you agree of that lot over the last 7 to 10 years? I can't really think of, I mean, going back a little further, Marcus Stroud, or guys like that. I'm like, no, Marcel Darius was not good enough for long enough for me to
Well,
trust
yeah.
him. Anyway, I don't know. I just thought it
Yeah,
would be fun.
Darius is a fun name to throw in there because which version are you getting? Are you getting the motivated version or not? I mean, Kyle Williams was on a lot of those Bills teams that got run, over and through as
That's
well.
true.
So, I mean, you know, if we're talking about like a run stuffer, you probably do have to go back to like, well, Darius when he was motivated, or Stroud, or some of those other guys, like back to like Sam Adams and Pat Williams and all
I
that
was going to
stuff.
say Pat Williams. Can I say Pat Williams? Because I will say Pat Williams. I will definitely say Pat Williams there. Anyway, I just thought that would be fun. All right, so the Bills are off a bye right now, okay?
Mhm.
This is just an opinionated question, but like right now, you look at this team and there's power rankings going on Tuesday.
Yep.
You see the Bills 2 to 4 range pretty much. Pretty much everyone has Detroit number 1. And
Mhm.
I would say that's deserved. I mean, I got no gripe, no beef with that. But where would you have the Bills ranked right now? And again, it doesn't matter. This could change in a week, 2 weeks, whatever. But as things stand right now, just for fun, where we're at in the season, where would you have the Bills ranked?
Sure, I have them top three.
Yeah.
With Detroit and Philly right now, I have Kansas City probably fourth. But I think there's a tier where there's those top three teams that I think could beat anybody every single game they go out. And Philly's won. They were 2-2. Like there was
Yeah.
talk. Like you remember Sirianni bringing out his kids to the press conference to shield himself from negative questions from the media. Like they were, at a breaking point there. And then they've rattled off 7 straight wins. They're a very talented team. Obviously, they haven't beaten a ton of great teams in that stretch, but they beat the Bengals by 20 points when the Bengals have been hanging, a lot of points on teams. They beat the Commanders, they beat the Rams. So like they've got some solid wins in that 7-game win streak. Um, I just think that they should be in that conversation among the top 3 teams in the NFL. And I mean, I don't think the Bills have too many holes. I don't think the Lions have too many holes. So I'm putting those 3 teams kind of ahead of everybody else at this point.
Yeah, look, I think record matters a ton and just
Mhm.
talent does as well. I'll go one step further. I'm with you. I don't really have a number 1 team, but I have 2 tiers. Actually, I got 3 tiers. And I would have the Bills in that top tier. So I got the Bills, the Lions, and the Eagles as well. But I also still have the Chiefs. And I know they barely beat Carolina. I know they should have lost to Denver were it not for a blocked field goal. I got some takes on Kansas City. I want to save for the end of the show, but you're a
Okay.
one-loss team right now, and you're a 2-time defending Super Bowl champion. So I got them in that top tier as well. So Bills, Chiefs, Lions, Eagles. You can flip a coin any given week. Any of those teams I think could be number 1. Then I got only 2 teams in my next tier: Baltimore and Minnesota, because those are 2 really good football teams, but I still don't fully trust Minnesota yet. And Baltimore looks like world beaters, and they did a nice number on Monday Night Football against the
Mhm.
Chargers. But anyway, I've also seen them lose at home to the Raiders and to the Browns. So,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? I can't put them in that top tier. Potentially they are, but I don't have them there. And then I got like Green Bay and Houston. I think those teams are so similar in a way. Like they're really good rosters. You look at them and you're like, wow, this is a really good football team. But then they don't always play up to that, especially Houston of late. I mean, Houston's really struggled. They got 5 losses now. They just lost at
Mhm.
home to the Titans. So I don't know, man. I probably would have them in that 3rd tier, and I'm a lot less worried about them by the week.
So you don't have Pittsburgh in any of those top 3 tiers, right?
I just don't buy them. I'd have them. You could make an argument that they could be in that 3rd tier with Houston and Green Bay. You could even make an argument that they deserve to be in that tier over Houston at this point. I mean, they're only.
Well, see,
Hmm,
here's the thing about the Steelers, right? Like, I also don't trust them, but they've also beaten the Falcons, Broncos, Chargers,
yeah,
Commanders. They've beaten the Ravens. Like, they've got more impressive wins than the Bills probably at this point in the season. And they've done it with 2 different quarterbacks. So, I mean, they're a very talented team. But like you said, it's kind of hard to trust them on a week in, week out basis because it just feels like I don't know. They've got obviously the dominant defense, but do they have enough on offense to compete when, the going gets tough in January. And so I'm putting them, with that, in that kind of second or third group like
That's
you are.
fair.
I certainly don't think they're in the top tier, but I mean, they at least deserve a seat at this table. They're underdogs this week against the Cincinnati Bengals, which I think is just a fascinating development. It's in Cincinnati, but it's still like, I mean, they're what, 3 or 4 games up on Cincinnati, and they're still underdogs. So
Yeah,
it's funny.
that is pretty wild. We'll circle around to NFL talk
Yeah,
at the end. I want to kind of dive in now with the Bills. Like I said, I think there's keys for this team to be able to maintain down the stretch.
sure.
I don't think any of these are me, uncovering any stones that nobody thought about, but I do think they're important and worth you and I discussing today. And the top one is, and I know health would be the one that a lot of people would say, and that's
Yes.
right there behind it. But to me, number one, this team, it lives and dies with Josh Allen. I don't think this is a football team that's going to win in January if Josh Allen is just okay, if he's average, if he's mediocre. Josh Allen has played at an MVP level through his first 11 games. I think the number one factor for the Bills down the stretch is that he continues to play at the MVP caliber level that he is. Quick little side note. If you had a vote right now, the Bills didn't play this week. Lamar did. He had a good game. Barkley had a monster game. Is Josh Allen still, and I know a lot of people won't even care about this, and I barely do, but Josh Allen, if you had a vote right now to cast, the season was ending, is Josh Allen still your MVP?
Oh yeah, and I've been talking about this with the guys at work because obviously it's a national group of folks that we're talking about, and we were having this conversation after Saquon. Like, did we want to put MVP in the headline for our Saquon Barkley article? And they're like, Matt's going to have an opinion. Of course I do. Like, Josh Allen has twice as many touchdowns as Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley has what, two or three? I mean, he's got another MVP candidate at quarterback. He's got, at least one other Pro Bowler, if not two other Pro Bowlers, in AJ Brown. And, just like the rest of that offense is like kind of geared to like, they have so many different ways to beat you. The Bills,
Right.
yeah, they've got one Pro Bowler in like, say, James Cook. They've got another Pro Bowler in Deion Dawkins. But like, Josh Allen is like really carrying this offense kind of on his back, where Saquon has not had to do that in Philadelphia. And so just all stats for sure are going to favor Josh Allen. But like, I mean, even if Saquon sets the NFL rushing record, but does it in 17 games, averages like 170 yards rushing, like it's still like, you can still point to the other parts of that Eagles offense that are allowing him to do that. Whereas Josh Allen's going to be the reason that the Bills offense is doing anything. And so I just think the MVP is a quarterback award. At least it has been since 2012. And I just think that like, if you take Saquon off that Eagles team, they're going to be fine. If you take Josh Allen off this Bills team, I mean, what are we even doing here? Like, so I do think he's the MVP favorite right now.
Yeah, I would agree right now. I do think Barkley, I mean, wins matter the most. Plus, this is a quarterback award too. So I mean that's obvious. But like last year, if Barkley would have done this last year, I think maybe he wins MVP over Lamar Jackson, who was not impressive at all statistically, which is funny because Lamar Jackson is ultra impressive right now statistically.
Mm-hmm.
He's got over 3,000 yards. He's leading the NFL in passing yards. He's tied for first in touchdown passes. He's number one in QBR in the whole league. He's only thrown 3 interceptions this season. He's only been sacked 16 times, and he leads. Of course, he leads all NFL quarterbacks in rushing yards, and he's 21st overall in rushing yards. So statistically, Lamar Jackson is painting a beautiful portrait right now for MVP. But yeah, you got 2 bad home losses. It's got to count against you. So I'll go with you there with Josh. Let me ask you this: to continue to play at an MVP caliber, forget the numbers or whether he's going to win it or not, but MVP caliber, what are your keys right now for Josh Allen to be able to maintain what he does? I would assume you would talk about just being patient and poised, which we've seen a lot more of, just mentally sharper this year than ever before.
Yeah, patience was the word that I had in my head when you were asking the question. We only need like a couple Josh Allen signature plays a game, right? Like, it doesn't have to be every single throw. You can't gain 10 points.
Sorry about
And
that.
so
I hit the
oh,
wrong
it's like,
button.
you
Go ahead.
can't gain 10 points on every single throw, Josh. And so like I just keep going back to that Jets opener in 2023 when it felt like he was trying to do everything with every single throw, and he
Right.
has not felt that way at all in 2024. So as long as he stays patient, especially against the two high safeties, like I just think he's feeling it more, and so like it allows him when he does need to do those superhero moments, to just like to be fully prepared for them and to just kind of lock in and elevate the team when he needs to, not on every single play.
Do you think his leadership, his style of leadership, which is not rah rah, it's not in your face necessarily so much with his other players, at least not what we could see on the field. Who knows what it's like in the locker room? We
Mhm.
don't know that. But I had a really good conversation on the show yesterday with PK from the Buffalo Sports Collective. And one of the things we talked about with Josh Allen and what's really kind of taken his game to a next level and also rubbed off on his team is just this is a very unselfish football team. I think this is a team who truly does it. I don't know how much of that is because Stephon Diggs is gone. I mean, Stephon Diggs, one of the best receivers in the NFL, but Stephon Diggs wanted that football. And if he wasn't getting it enough, there were probably some drama in the locker room. That's what I think that's a safe assumption to say. Anyway, this team this year, it just feels like they don't care who the star of the game is. They don't care if it's Cooper, Kincaid, Davis, Cook, whoever it may be, Josh, of course, putting the team on his back, the defense, whoever's coming up with the big play. It seems like they don't care who the star is, who's getting the headlines after the game, not counting Josh because he's always going to get the headlines. But to me, and I know this is also Sean McDermott, of course, as well, just the culture in this team, but also Josh is the leader. He's the guy on this team. And when he's got that mindset, like it doesn't seem like, at least when, his dealings with the media and everything that we see, I don't think he doesn't seem like much of an ego guy, like what his numbers are and stuff like that. He's quick to talk about his weapons, the offensive
Mhm.
line, things like that. His leadership, do you kind of sense that that's really grown, even just maybe this year with Stephon Diggs gone? And maybe, I don't know, maybe that was a little bit of a burden on his shoulders, trying to force the ball to him or whatever, make sure he gets his numbers. And it's not like that this year, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. A lot of people liken Josh Allen to a golden retriever, and for me, his like leadership style is like one of the boys, and like lead from within and all this other stuff. And so, I do think it probably has grown a little bit now that he doesn't have to like go through one guy and as opposed to all of the guys.
Mhm.
Um, it's interesting because one of the things that they talked about or Ty Dunn did in that go long piece was how Allen's leadership style and Sean McDermott's leadership style didn't necessarily mesh, and they wanted him to, step up a little bit, be more of that leader, not necessarily one of the guys thing. But I've always felt like getting buy-in from other people is way better than like using a stick, so to speak.
Sure.
And so I like Josh Allen's leadership style. I like how he talks to the media. Um, he, it's not just that he's like a perfect physical specimen to be a quarterback in the NFL. He gets it. He gets how to to interact with the other players on his team, at least publicly. Like I said, we don't know in the locker room. He understands how to interact with the media, interact with fans, and just be that leader in kind of all of those phases. And so I really enjoy watching him be a leader. With the handshakes and all the rest of the crap. And not being that selfish person, having a handshake for everybody, not just like, a couple individual people. Everyone's got one.
You just used the word enjoy, and I kind of feel like it's important to me, I think, to take a step back. Look, we're getting there, crunch time, it's coming soon anyway, the playoffs, and ultimately the Bills are going to be judged, as they should be, by what they do in the postseason, even though this year was supposed to be this transitional year. But I really try to at least attempt to grind out some time and just appreciate watching Josh Allen play football.
Oh
We've
yeah.
been Bills fans for a long time, and it's easy to take it for granted what he's going to go out there and do each week. Sometimes bad too, the
Mhm.
maddening bad stuff. But it's like, if you're a Bills fan, I really hope that you're at least attempting to kind of just take a little bit of time and really just acknowledge and just enjoy this era of quarterbacking. because there hasn't been a lot like this, not just in Buffalo, but just around the league, period. You said it, the perfect physical specimen. That's what Josh Allen has always been. But what I think right now, at least at this point, and we'll see how things play out, but right now, the difference is he's really getting that mental side of the game down too. Like the Peyton Mannings and the Tom Brady's. And I'm talking about seeing a defense, what they're throwing at you, what they're going to play. Things, it feels like the game has slowed down a little bit for him in terms of just knowing the defense. And I think that's really helped elevate his game to the next level as well. Real quick, before we get to a break, we talked about health for a second. That's got to be right there too as the biggest key. Health fortune. I mean, look, we follow the Bills. You follow the league more than I do. You're with SB Nation. I'm more locked in on the Bills. I know every team has injuries, but it just always feels like the Bills' injuries are always worse when they're bigger and just more guys get hurt. There's a handful of guys on each side of the ball. They can't afford to lose down the stretch, and they've lost them and gotten away with it to this point. Guys like Terrell Bernard and Taron Johnson, especially on the defensive side of the ball, they got to stay healthy. They're great players. Teron's an all-pro player. Bernard is ascending towards that type of player. But there's durability concerns the way they play football. You got to worry about that. Khalil Shakir takes some shots in that slot. He took a really hard one late in that Chiefs game. But, Kincaid's got a knee issue right now, and we'll talk about him specifically in a second. But health fortune is going to be really big for the Bills down the road. Let's not forget who was playing middle linebacker against the Chiefs last year in the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? It's like every team could say this, it's a playoff contender, but health fortune is just so important to the Bills, even with good depth.
Yeah, it absolutely is. There's a few guys that I've looked at that I think are incredibly important. And I want to start on the offensive line with Deion Dawkins and Connor McGovern. Like the Bills, the drop off from, I'll say 5 to 6 is significant on the Bills offensive line, but I think that the drop off from 6 to 7 is even bigger. And so, like, if they lose a Deion Dawkins, if they lose a Connor McGovern, I think they're really hurting. Obviously, they got by without Spencer Brown this past week, or in their last game, I should say. But I mean, losing Dawkins or McGovern would be really detrimental to the entire offense. Whether you're talking about the passing offense with Josh Allen or the rushing offense with James Cook. Like we saw how they were kind of able to scheme around the loss of Khalil Shakir. I think he's an incredibly important piece of that offense, even more important than Amari Cooper or Dalton Kincaid, like things like that. But Dawkins and McGovern in particular on the offensive side of the ball would be very devastating if either of them missed any significant periods of time.
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, those are two guys you can't lose. And again, you could go up and down the line. You could go to the Chiefs, you go to the Ravens, and there's 3-4 guys that you can't afford to lose. So it's not unique for the Bills to say that. You're right about those offensive guys. And we've seen with the defense, they've been able to at least hold it down to an extent without Johnson and without Bernard. But those are two guys. Actually, there's one more, and then kind of is going to lead to the break here. I want to take a break because there's one other guy that I want to talk about and it's not Greg Rousseau, even though it could easily be Greg Rousseau, but that's not the guy specifically that I had in mind. Take a quick break, and I'll tell you who it is. Hi, we are back here the day before Thanksgiving. I'm with Matt Moran from SB Nation. We are going over some of the biggest Bills keys down the stretch here as the Bills hopefully will make a run towards the Super Bowl. And we talked about injuries and guys they can't afford to lose. And look, we could probably run off 10 to 15 that would really hurt. One of them, which kind of, let's just assume he doesn't get hurt, he stays healthy. To me, a big stretch or key down the stretch is the play of Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones in the middle of this Bills defense. It's been pretty well lately, and it really needs to stay. Look, I don't want to say love-hate because I never hate Ed Oliver, but I've called him Jekyll and Hyde. Like, there's certain games where, man, he just looks so good. The Chiefs game is a perfect example. He looked so good last week or 2 weeks ago in Orchard Park against the Chiefs. I go to the Miami game in Miami week 2. Ed Oliver borderline dominated that game. And then there's other games, dude, where he's just not a factor. He disappears. He does nothing. And
Mhm.
they can't, he's too important to this defense and Daquan to be absent. You know, this is a team. If there's a weakness on this defense, to me, it's the ability to stop the run. You know, teams
Mhm.
could run the football. Well, if your defensive tackles are getting pushed back and getting blocked one-on-one off the line, and they're not making noise, even if it's not tackles, then your defense is going to be in a lot of trouble. So to me, I look at the Ed Oliver, the Quan Jones combo, and look, they've like to rotate guys. Well, you could throw Austin Johnson in there, who's had two incredible interceptions this season.
Yeah.
Dwayne Carter might be coming back from IR soon. We'll see. And then Jordan Phillips is in the mix probably as well. But defensive tackle play led by Ed Oliver to Quan Jones. To me, that is a huge key for the Bills right now.
Yeah, we saw what happened last year when Ed Oliver was dealing with his high ankle sprain and Daquan
Mhm.
Jones, was out for a big chunk of the season with his injury. Like the Bills' defensive tackles were bad last year. I mean, us just say it. And
Terrible.
this year, obviously, this year they're playing better with Oliver and Daquan in there. And I do think they have solid depth, but I don't think if you took Ed Oliver or Daquan Jones out, like you'd have a pretty big drop off to whoever's going to be replacing them at this point in time. And so those guys staying healthy obviously going to be important as well. Um, we did talk a little bit about Marcel Darius kind of being a little Jekyll and Hyde too. I don't think Ed Oliver swings that far, but you mentioned two of the biggest games of the year. Ed Oliver was playing up to the level of competition.
Yeah.
Obviously, that didn't necessarily happen against the Ravens because they got like smoked right off the bat. And I said on this podcast at the time, I think once that really long touchdown run happened with Derrick Henry, the wind was taken out of the whole defense's sails, and they just kind of folded up shop and left a little bit on the field that night. But I think Oliver in particular steps up in those bigger games, like and plays better against better opponents. So as long as he's not hurt, like I'm looking forward to what he can do in some of those January games.
This is where I get a little controversial and get a little bit of heat from Bills fans, but I'm going to say it anyway. Well, not with Stephon anymore because he's not here. But I've said this has been my take for a while now with Ed Oliver and a couple other guys on this team. The difference between the Chiefs and the Bills in the playoffs the last couple of years, the close game last year, 21 seconds a couple of years ago, is Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, to me, pretty much play to a stalemate. They're
Mhm.
both, they're a draw. They both do enough for their teams to win the game. The difference has been the quote unquote secondary stars for the Chiefs. Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, they're other big stars. They come to play in the playoffs. They make big plays. They make impactful plays. And Stephon Diggs for his 100-yard reception seasons, not the case in elimination games
Yeah.
at all. Ed Oliver, multiple times. I think he's got one tackle in both those two games combined. So Ed Oliver has been great at times, but he has fallen on his face in terms of being an impactful player that the Bills need
Mhm.
him to be in the playoffs, specifically against the Chiefs. So I love Ed at times, but
Mhm.
he needs to be what we saw last week against Kansas City or 2 weeks ago. He needs to be that in January if they play them again. And if he doesn't, he's just another dude. I don't care how good he looks in the regular season, man. I've
Mhm.
seen it
No, that's right.
multiple times. So,
Yeah, that's right. I was watching the Manning cast on Monday Night Football this week, and Quentin Johnson had those three targets and couldn't come up
mm,
with any of them, even though they were going to be hard catches, right? But
sure.
Peyton Manning over and over again is like, make a play for your guy, make a play for your guy. And it's hard to name too many folks that made a play other than Josh Allen in some of those games. Like,
Yeah.
yes, Gabe Davis. Obviously, Gabe Davis had that huge game in the playoffs against the Chiefs. And he was definitely making plays. But to your point about Stephon Diggs or Ed Oliver, like how many times have we said their name in a key moment in some of those big games to make a play for their team? Like that's all we need sometimes. Just like that one
Yeah.
signature moment, like just one drive stop or one something to get
Look
over
what
the hump.
look what Chris Jones did. He's quiet
Yeah.
for a lot of that game, the playoff game last year. And when he needed to get that one pass rush to force an early throw, that's what he does.
Mhm.
Travis Kelce was pretty absent for a big chunk down the road or stretch of the regular season. And look, he steps his game up in the
Mhm.
playoffs. If the Bills are going to be a Super Bowl team, a guy who significant like Ed Oliver needs to be the good Ed Oliver. Which one's the good one? Jekyll or Hyde? Jekyll's the good one, right? So Ed Oliver needs to be Jekyll in the playoffs. That's all I'm saying, dude.
Okay.
Another one where another key, which you know what, as I reflect on this, maybe it's not as big of a key as I think at least it should be. But the Dalton Kincaid that we expected before the season, we have not really seen that this year. Now, yes, he did miss last week with an injury, or last game with an injury, and also most of the second half with that injury. So he's missed a game and a half already this year. But 34 catches for 356 yards and 2 touchdowns. And this was coming off a rookie season where he had 73 catches for 673 yards. I think there were a lot of people out there, understandably so, that said that this is going to be an 80 catch, 850 to 900 yard season, 6-7 touchdowns for Kincaid. And that really hasn't materialized at all. So how important is it to get him back to that level? Or I can't believe I'm saying this because it felt like they had no weapons 2 months ago, but they got enough other guys at receiver and stuff that maybe Dalton Kincaid's stats don't really matter that much.
Well, speaking of guys that stepped up when they needed it, Dawson Knox in that game without Dalton Kincaid, I mean, deserves a lot of credit for stepping up. He had some really nice plays in that game. So, like, that's one of the reasons I don't see Kincaid as, like, you know, immensely irreplaceable like some of those other guys we talked about, because they do have Knox, who's shown that he can do that in big games, and they do have those other weapons. I do think early in the year, and we talked about this, I know, defenses were keying on Kincaid, especially in the red zone. And like he was getting double, sometimes triple coverage in some of those spots. And so if like, think about having Amari Cooper and Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid all on the field at the same time, like, wouldn't that be fun? Or, hey, let's throw Keon Coleman in. Let's get all 4 of those guys on the field at the same time and see if we can't like open it up a little bit underneath for Dalton Kincaid. And so the patience we were talking about with Josh Allen, like that's going to be where Shakir and Kincaid can kind of work in the underneath area. So it will be nice to kind of hopefully get all those folks back a little bit healthy now that the buys happened and Kincaid missed, like he's been out a couple weeks now, if you include the buy. So hopefully he can be healthy. Hopefully Cooper's healthy, all that stuff.
I would say too, you know, I got to let people know we are recording this Tuesday. So we don't know. We're hopeful that Wednesday's practice report is going to be good. I would expect to see a bunch of guys limited. I'm sure it'll be limited. I don't think any of these guys who were missed last game are going to be quote unquote full participants. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would say being limited on Wednesday is going to be a key. Like if you're still a DNP on Wednesday after a bye, I'll be skeptical about you playing on Sunday. I usually don't start thinking about Sunday until Thursday at the earliest, maybe even Friday after Sean speaks to WGR on Friday mornings. But if you're a DNP on Wednesday after a bye week, I'm definitely going to be wary of you playing. One other thing, too, about Dalton, he got hurt in that game, and then he tried to come back. I wonder, and we don't know, but I wonder if he re-aggravated something and made it worse when he tried to come back, because he did play a second or a couple snaps in the second half of that game. Not Kansas City, the game before that. So, you know, we'll see it. We'll see what goes on with him. But again, going back to kind of like the Ed Oliver thing, I consider Dalton Kincaid, he's a first-round pick, one of those guys who needs to step up when it matters most in the playoffs, and hopefully we'll see that. Got a couple more.
He started doing that. He did start doing that. I think it was against, was it the Dolphins or the Colts, where he had that really difficult third down catch. I can't remember where it was, but like we started to see some of those flashes before he got hurt. And I remember even tweeting it because I was still using Twitter back then. So it was probably the Dolphins game. You know, that this is the kind of play we've been hoping he would make, a step up play, a play to help your guy, to quote Peyton Manning.
Yeah, now I'm thinking about it. It was the Colts game when he got hurt, right? I think it was a Miami game where he made a couple big catches. I think it was a Miami game. Yeah, he got hurt against the Colts. Safety position. All right. Look, I will admit it. I've been paranoid the whole time this season about this position. And it feels like, especially over the last month or so, week after week, like my fears have they continue to be alleviated, because the safety play, I'm not going to say spectacular by any means. It's not the Hyde and Boyer, you know, all pro connection that we had back there. It was spoiled by for several years, but it's been fine, man. It's been fine. Taylor Rapp has not got him burned. He hasn't killed you. DeMar Hamlin is same ditto. I mean, again, the Bills have only been beat deep one time this whole season. And as much as I, did not like the play of DeMar early in the season, he didn't play that game. It was Cole Bishop and Rasul Douglas who had that miscommunication, and basically it was Cole Bishop's fault and Nico Collins burned him. But that aside, dude, they're not giving up big plays, and it seems like they're getting a little more physical and active in the run defense too each week. That said, I'm still not going to say I'm really confident in DeMar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp right now as a tandem. So them staying steady at least and not falling apart in a big game, in a big moment against good football teams, to me, is going to be a huge key, because we've talked about Micah Hyde for weeks now. Are we safe to say that barring injury, Micah Hyde is not coming back to the Buffalo Bills? Because I feel like this would have already happened during the bye week, like him signing, and it didn't. Don't they still have an open roster spot, though? No, know what? That's for Milano, though. Milano comes back. They do. They got 52. Milano could come back, and they wouldn't have to cut anybody. Anyway, Micah Hyde, I feel like that would have happened if it was going to happen. Now it probably would take an injury, maybe two, to get him back. Cole Bishop's just not ready. He's not going to be a factor, barring an injury, as a rookie. So it's DeMar and it's Rapp. Safety play being steady, man. Pretty big key, right?
Yeah, and I think Rapp has been very, very steady, especially since he returned from his concussion. He's been very good, I think. Not great, like you said, but I mean, very good. They might not be giving up those, huge big plays, like 25-yarder plus plays, but they're giving up a lot of like those 10 to 20-yard plays. And that's still a concern for me. Hopefully that'll lessen when Milano's back. Hopefully it'll lessen if they can like figure out the run fits and all that other stuff too. But part of that is how deep Hamlin's been playing and how deep Rapp has been playing, and not like wanting to necessarily come up. So we'll see. Like I do think we can close the door on Micah Hyde unless we get an injury. But I mean, they've been okay. I'll just keep saying that the safety play's been okay. They're not scaring anybody, but they're also not a liability.
If Ed Oliver plays well, if DeQuan plays well, if Milano is back, and he's Matt Milano that we know, not the first or second week, but by week 17 going into the playoffs,
sure.
you can mask the safeties. Just, I'll be okay with just don't give up a 50-yard touchdown. You know what I mean? It's like, I'll trust other guys to make plays and kill drives with a key third down sack or a pass breakup or something along those lines. I got two more things. Number one, this is a gut feeling. It's just this thing that sits in me and I don't like it. I thought it was gone after he made that 61-yarder to beat Miami, which, by the way, I got, what a lot of people have been saying, that's the big play, the best play of the season was Josh Allen's touchdown against the Chiefs. I still feel like Tyler Bass's 61 franchise record-setting 61-yard field goal was the play of the season so far. He literally won you the football game. And again, no one in Bills history has ever made a 61-yard field goal. And this guy was the last person you expected to win a game with a monster play, and he did. So I'm going to give him props for that. But then he misses an extra point against the Chiefs, and I'm right back to, key to me down the stretch is, God, I really hope a game does not come down to a Tyler Bass kick, even though we watched them beat Miami. I still got that uneasiness to me when it comes to Tyler Bass right now.
I'd love to see him make another big regular season kick, just to like kind of settle all of that. But I mean, people were, of course, after he missed the extra point in this last game, like already starting, back down that path. And it's just like, you want Justin Tucker miss a kick, like Fairbairn missed like an easy chip shot field goal at the end. Like, they're not going to be perfect, guys. Like, it's so. I would like to see one more big regular season kick to kind of really make sure we're off the schneid here. So I really mentally felt good after that kick. And then he, like I said, some extra points and other shorter field goals were going right in the middle. And then he misses the extra point. I'm like, oh my God. Thankfully, it didn't end up mattering. When you're playing the Chiefs too, like when he missed that extra point, I spent the next however many amount of minutes all the way to the end of the game. I'm like, that kick is going to matter. It's going to matter. It didn't, thankfully. Right.
Last thing, too. And this is not about any specific player. It's about the team. I think maybe the biggest key besides, Josh and health. Those are the first two. But getting no worse than the second seed, I just think it is so huge for the Bills. It would be huge. Look, number one seed is very much in play still, okay? If the Bills could stay hot and Kansas City just falls one time, the Bills have that tiebreaker advantage. But for the sake of discussion, because if you get the one, obviously you don't have to worry about home field and you don't even have to play in the first round. But let's just say that 2 seed, okay? You're playing 7. I think it's huge. And let's just give the Bills a wild card round win. I'm not, it's no given, but let's just say they win that. That second round, whether it's Baltimore, whether it's Pittsburgh, maybe Houston gets hot at the end or something. I don't see that, but you never know. Maybe Houston wins as the 5 and then the 6 beats the 3 or something like that. You could be playing Houston, who knows, in the second round. But any of those teams, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Houston, especially Baltimore or Pittsburgh for that matter, playing them in Orchard Park to me is just so big as opposed to having to say to go to Baltimore or to Pittsburgh in January. That home crowd will make a big, big difference. The weather, well, depending on who the team is, it would be a big, it would be a big deal for Houston. Maybe not as much Pittsburgh or Baltimore, but that home field advantage, what I'm getting to here, even though the Bills have lost the last 2 years at home to end their season in the playoffs, I don't care. I still think it's huge to play Baltimore, Pittsburgh in the divisional round at home as opposed to on the road.
Yeah, and I would love to see them kind of sew up their whatever spot they're going to be in by the time that week 18 game against the Patriots comes around, because I would love to see them be able to rest some guys in that game if they're not going to get the 1 seed in the bye, so that they're a little bit healthier going into, say, January. Or sorry, January 12th, whatever it is. And so I would love to see them a little bit healthier on that stretch. So if they can sew up, like, yeah, we're definitely going to be the 2 or the 3 seed. We're more likely to be the 2 seed. I can see them resting their guys in week 18, even with that kind of second round home field advantage on the line, just so they can get that rest. Because I think that's more important than where they play. Like, they were up on the Chiefs with 13 seconds left in Arrowhead. Like, I don't think that necessarily where they play bothers me too much. Although I probably don't want them going to Pittsburgh. That'd be a tough one.
Look, and to your point too, that week 18, if they're going to rest some guys, I still feel like you could be confident enough that you could beat New England, even with guys that you're resting, which, they could deny that it wouldn't matter to them, but New England might very much be in play for the first overall pick come week 18 as well. So they might have some incentive to not win that football game, even though they would never come out, of course, and say that. Before we go, let's just say the Bills finish as the 2 seed because that's where they're at right now. Let's just say they hold court. Things could change, but it looks like right now that 7th seed, the Bills will play the 7 if they were the 2. It looks like it's Denver or Miami. Denver's got like a game and a half lead now in the race for that 7th spot. But it's probably going to be one of those 2 teams. Of those 2 teams, who would you rather play if you're the Buffalo Bills? Because I feel like you could probably make a plausible case for either of those teams. But if it's you and you got your choice, who are you playing?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting you didn't include the Bengals in that particular thing either, because they're a game behind Miami. I understand that, but I think the Dolphins are. I definitely don't want to play the Bengals. Yes, if I see the Dolphins on the schedule, I'm not really scared, but they can put up points, and we know that the Bills have been able to limit them. They limited them to 10 points, in week 2 or whatever it was. Denver's offense is 18th in points, 23rd in yards. They rely on that really awesome defense. I think it would be easier to overcome Denver than it would be to overcome the Dolphins. So if I'm choosing Denver, 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10. I definitely do not want to see the Cincinnati Bengals sneak into that 7 spot. And Miami would not scare me. I mean, just look at the Bills' record against them, really in the whole Sean McDermott era. But going back to Josh's season, he's two goal line passes away from beating them, and just one was in the dirt and one bounced off Charles Clay's hands for some reason. So
sure. Now look, I'm actually looking at the standings too as I'm talking to you. But again, if it's those 2 teams, I'd rather play Denver.
Yeah.
As good as the defense is good, but they also, you know what? You got a rookie quarterback. You're not used to being in the playoffs. You don't know the Bills as well. I always feel like, although the Bills have absolutely owned the Miami Dolphins, you're not going to pull the wool over the eyes of Miami with anything you do. They know what you're going to do. They do have an offense that potentially could go out there and score 30 points. You know, if it's a unseasonably warm January day in Orchard Park and there's not a lot of wind or snow, Miami's got that offense that could put up some points, and they know what you're going to do. Denver, again, a rookie quarterback coming to Orchard Park, winning in the playoffs. That wouldn't scare me that much. And it's not that I'm disrespecting Denver at all here. And I'm looking at the standings. Yeah, the Chiefs are 4-7. I mean, not the Chiefs. The Bengals are 4-7, man. Oh, God. Look, it would take a half a second for both of us to decide that's the team you don't want to play. The Colts are 5-7. I'm just looking at the Bengals. So you got no more room for error whatsoever. And they're still playing Pittsburgh
twice.
They're playing Pittsburgh twice, and they're playing Denver, which they're trying to catch. Yeah, let's be Steeler fans this weekend, okay? They're on the bye, right?
Next weekend, yes, yeah.
Yeah, next weekend. So we'll be Steeler fans. First and foremost, I want to make sure the Bengals don't make the playoffs.
Exactly. Yes. We can root for the Titans, the Browns. Heck, I'd even root for the Cowboys, so they could beat the Bengals. But yeah, Cincinnati, they've had some really explosive weeks. Like those games against the Ravens where they put up 38 and 34 and lost both of those games is just ridiculous.
Yeah. Last point I wanted to make about the Chiefs. Unpopular opinion. So the last thing I'm going to say on this show is going to make a couple fans probably a little pissed off at me at Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. Screw Pat, screw this show. Look, I know a lot of people are talking about the Chiefs just being lucky all the time. They get lucky. The officials help them. They get lucky. They get all the breaks, this and that. I look at the Chiefs and I feel like they're being disrespected right now. I feel like they're being underappreciated. End of the day, they got one loss this season. It's not easy to win in the NFL. You're the two-time defending Super Bowl champs. You're getting everybody's best shot every week. You know, a lot of people, mostly idiot Chiefs fans, were saying that was the Bills Super Bowl 2 weeks ago when the Bills beat the Chiefs. That's stupid. But you know what's not stupid? This is the Panthers Super Bowl when they play them. The Raiders Super Bowl, the Broncos Super Bowl, the Chargers. A lot of these football teams, that's their Super Bowl when they play the Kansas City Chiefs. You're getting their best shot, and they find ways to win. They only got one loss. Their defense is still really good. Their quarterback, guess what? He's still probably the best quarterback in the world, and they are two-time defending Super Bowl champions. And yet, so many people underappreciate and just disrespect the Chiefs. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but that's how I feel about the Chiefs if I'm being honest and objective about it.
I mean, I didn't put them in my top tier. I mean, you had them in your top tier, so like maybe I'm one of the people that's disrespecting them. But they have 2 wins by 2 scores. Everything else has been a single score game. Nothing really on their teams terrifies me outside of Chris Jones. And Patrick Mahomes has to be in that conversation too. We saw another kind of like slithery first down run against the Panthers to put them into field goal range.
Dane Jackson. I put Dane. You're not on Twitter anymore. I blasted. It was Dane Jackson.
Oh, it was Dane Jackson?
He did not even hustle. It looked like he was not even interested in making that tackle. He cost the Chiefs, he cost the Panthers by 20 yards of field position.
Yeah.
I said Dane Jackson basically handed the game to the Chiefs. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're really good at converting third downs. Obviously, the Bills were able to limit them in the game against Buffalo. There's some things that they do really, really well. And obviously they remind me so much of those Patriots teams that won all those games. They wait for you to make the mistake and then they capitalize on it. And they're certainly not the Chiefs of the last few years that terrify me every time they step onto the field. And so I think that might be it, that maybe we're underappreciating just the steadiness that they've exhibited, but they're eyelashes away from 3 or 4 more losses. And so I think that's what people are pointing to right now, is that they kind of have gotten lucky, and we expect that that's going to course correct, but it doesn't have to course correct. It just doesn't have to.
I don't know if it's ever going to correct itself with this team. That's what I'm saying. The coach, the quarterback, they're just
Yep.
Like them or not, they're winners, and they just find ways to win football games, man. It's wild.
Yep.
One last point, too. So I would urge people, let's just say, for the sake of discussion, I hope I'm wrong. The Bills can win out. Chiefs lose one game, whatever. But let's just say the Bills have one or two stumbles over these
Sure.
last 6 games. It's absolutely feasible, especially when you're going to Detroit. And let's say the Chiefs only lose maybe one more game, too. And the Bills finish it, too. I just, they're 2 games clear. Well, actually, they're only 1 game clear because, like, Pittsburgh's only got 3 losses. Game and a half clear as things stand right now. But that 2 seed, I would say, I talk Denver, Miami. You also could throw the Chargers in that mix, too, because I just looked at the standings here as you were talking, and the Chargers are only a half a game up on Denver. So it's very feasible that Denver could catch them, and it could end up being the Chargers who make the playoffs as the 7th seed. In fact, I'd be willing to wager one of those 2 teams are going to be to play. Because Miami, I still think, I look at their schedule, and I still think they got 2 more losses minimum. One of them might be on Thursday night when they go to Green Bay. Obviously, we're all going to be Packers fans here, if you want Miami out of this. But yeah, I Denver and the Chargers might actually be the play there, or be one of those 2 teams. So
the Chargers have a very, very good defense. They're first in points allowed. They're very good. They're very good against the run. You're not quite sure what you're going to get out of Herbert in those big games just because you've seen him falter so many times. But with Harbaugh on the sideline, you feel like they're going to be steadier. They played pretty well against the Ravens last night and still got beat by 2 touchdowns. So like I don't know if they're like all the way where they want to be yet as far as like being a contender. But I mean, they can definitely be a dangerous team drive to drive and game to game.
I tempted to end this with one last unpopular, more popular opinion, because as much as I like Keon Coleman, man, I wish the Bills had Lab McConkey would have been a hell of a Buffalo Bill, man. That dude could play ball. But Keon Coleman's been good too. So anyway, we'll see. All right, it's gonna do it for this episode. You know what? I need you, because I don't know off the top of my head anyway, your handle. You're not using Twitter anymore. Like a lot of people, you're using Blue Sky. I'm on there as well. In fact, I'm going to put it up there on the video side. If you're watching this, there's my Patrick Moran TV at bsky.social. And of course, I still am on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, all that other stuff. But I know that you primarily parked now on Blue Sky. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm Matt Rich Warren at both places. So it's whatever, mattrichwarren.bluesky. Whatever it is. But no, I'm certainly still on both. I'm just doing like the live, like microblogging stuff, like during games. That's happening over on Blue Sky. So I'll have to be on both as long as I'm working in NFL coverage. I'll definitely have to be on both, especially like Blue Sky's missing some stuff like alerts, like being able to set those things up. Like, Schefter's not over there. Like Rappaport's probably the only like big newsbreaker guy that's over there. So like it's still like a work in progress, but I'm getting like my the old tweet deck set up. Like I'm getting that set up over at Blue Sky, so I can like get my multiple feeds at once and stuff like that. So it's I'll be on both. You can find me at both places.
I am on both. I'm looking forward to a couple more things happening with Blue Sky before I really dive in. Things that branding wise, videos. Every time I try to put up a clip, it's always too big. So I can never put a video clip up on there. And also another thing I love about Twitter that I don't like about Blue Sky is things stand anyway. I like to schedule tweets. Like if I got a lot of stuff going on, but I got something I want to put out at a certain time, a clip, whatever show related, with Twitter, you can schedule for whenever. And with Blue Sky, you can't do that yet. But yeah, like you said, it's a work in progress. But anyway, for Matt, I'm Patrick. By the way, tomorrow, audio only. There will be a Thanksgiving episode. I'm kind of have a clip show. Got some clips from past guests over the last couple weeks. Some good stuff. Maybe you missed some of it. So we're just going to have like kind of a clip highlight show for Thanksgiving. Friday, I will be back to normal. Bills 49ers preview, bowl predictions. That'll be on Friday. But again, one more time for Matt, I'm Pat. Enjoy. Have a good Thanksgiving, guys. Talk to you tomorrow still.